the heart of this nation, under skies so blue,
there's a spirit that's stirring, values strong and true.
from the mountains to the prairies, from the cities to the sea, we stand for liberty, for faith and family. We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe.
We're diving into a really tough story that came out of Frisco, Texas on April 3rd, 2025.
Yeah, a really tragic one.
It's about the death of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf. He was stabbed and, well, he died at a high school track meet.
Just awful.
And we're going to be looking at a couple of reports on this, one from American Wire News and another from Red State. Have you had a chance to look those over?
Yeah, I have. What strikes me right away is they both obviously cover the same horrible event.
Right.
But they seem to focus on different things, especially when it comes to reactions and the bigger questions that this brings up.
Definitely. And, as always, we're not here to take sides or push any kind of agenda.
Right.
We just want to look at what happened based on these sources.
Understand it as best we can.
Exactly. Understand what happened, see how people are reacting, especially right away, and then touch on some of the bigger conversations that come up.
All while sticking to what our sources say.
Exactly. So this is a fatal stabbing.
Yeah.
Austin Metcalf.
Both American Wire News and Red State say it happened at a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas.
Okay.
And Austin Metcalf was just 17. Both sources describe him as a really great kid. They talk about his perfect 4.0 GPA, how he is the MVP of his high school football team.
Wow.
And he was even getting attention from Division III college scouts, even though he was only a junior.
So this kid had a lot going for him. And to make this even more tragic, the person arrested and charged is also only 17.
Yeah.
Karmelo Anthony from a different school is facing a first-degree murder charge.
And no bail right now.
And here's where things get really, really disturbing. This whole thing apparently started over something so minor.
I know, it's almost unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
Both sources say Metcalf just told Anthony he was sitting in the wrong spot in the stands.
Just a comment about where he was sitting.
Yeah. And it's just so hard to grasp how something like that could turn so violent. Like, what does it say about us, about our society, that something so small could escalate like this?
It's terrifying to think about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And the details of the actual stabbing are just horrifying. Red State says Anthony pulled out a knife and stabbed Metcalf right in the chest.
And American Wire News goes even further and says the stab wound was right in the heart.
It just makes this even more tragic, the fact that Metcalf's twin brother Hunter was there and saw the whole thing.
He even tried to help Austin in those last moments.
And the quote from Hunter, it's in both reports, it's just heartbreaking. He said, "I tried to whip around as fast as I could. I looked at my brother, and I'm not going to talk about the rest. I tried to help him."
Yeah. Just awful at the trauma he must be going through.
I know, and to think that Austin actually died right there in his brother's arms, it's just unimaginable.
I can't even imagine.
And the reports also give us a glimpse into the immediate grief and devastation, especially through Austin's father, Jeff Metcalf.
Yeah, the way he describes his reaction is really powerful. American Wire News quotes him talking about the incomprehensible horror of watching his young son die in his twin brother's arms after a senseless stabbing.
Oh my God.
And he even talks about rushing to the scene, seeing Austin on the gurney, and then that moment when he realized how serious it was.
And they told him Austin wasn't breathing?
Yeah, and he saw the blood, the wound. It's just a really vivid and painful picture.
But even in the midst of this unimaginable pain, Jeff Metcalf said something really remarkable.
I know.
Red State says he actually said he's already forgiven the person who did this.
Really?
And he's relying on his faith to get through this.
Wow.
Yeah.
It just shows his incredible strength and character to be able to forgive in the face of something so awful.
It's really amazing.
But, he also raises a very valid question about Karmelo Anthony's background, his upbringing.
He wonders about his parents.
Yeah, both sources quote him saying, "I'm not trying to judge, but what kind of parents did this child have?
Mm-hmm.
What was he taught? He brought a knife to a track meet and he murdered my son by stabbing him in the heart."
It's a question a lot of people would ask in this situation.
Definitely. How does something like this even happen?
It's a big question about what leads to this kind of violence. American Wire News also points out the huge outpouring of emotion and prayers for the Metcalf family on X, formerly Twitter.
Yeah, they actually included some examples of the tweets, people expressing shock, offering condolences, trying to wrap their heads around this senseless act. And some of them even started to talk about bigger societal issues.
which we'll get to. But first, I think it's really important to understand what kind of person Austin Metcalf was.
Yeah, definitely.
Our sources give us some real insights into his character.
For sure. Both articles talk about his academic achievements, like that perfect 4.0 GPA, and how successful he was in football, being MVP. Red State even calls him a standout football star.
Right.
And they mentioned the interest he was getting from colleges, even as a junior.
Which is huge.
Yeah, it really is. And his father's description of him is really powerful, too. He called him a bright young man with a great future ahead of him and a leader of men.
And it sounds like he really had a positive influence on the people around him.
Absolutely. His dad also talked about how Austin's smile would light up the room and how he had this unbelievable passion for football.
It just breaks my heart. And American Wire News mentioned something really poignant, too. Austin's last post on social media, just a few days before this happened.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. He just wrote, "Faith that God got me, and my work will pay off."
It's just so sad knowing what could have been for him.
It really underscores the loss of such a young life full of potential.
It does. So let's talk about some of the discussions and questions that came up right after this happened, the things our sources reported.
Okay. This is where we start to see some different opinions and concerns being voiced.
Exactly. For example, American Wire News included a tweet from someone who claimed that if the races of the people involved were reversed, this would be national news and probably called a hate crime.
Right. And then they include a completely different view in another tweet from someone who said Metcalf started all of this over a seat.
It's interesting that they put those two contrasting opinions right next to each other.
It is. But it's important to remember that these are just individual reactions from social media.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily represent how everyone feels or the whole story.
Right. We're just presenting what these specific news sources chose to highlight.
Exactly.
Red State also brings up the amount of media coverage this story got or didn't get.
Oh, right.
They noticed that it wasn't really covered by the mainstream media, the legacy media, they call it.
And they even speculate that it's because it doesn't fit the narrative.
They're suggesting that maybe certain media outlets have an agenda.
Yeah, it's definitely a point to consider how different outlets frame the same story.
Definitely. And Red State's article also brings up a bigger concern about the influence of violent video games.
Oh, yeah?
They're worried about desensitization to violence, saying that maybe we're raising a generation on games where you can kill someone and then it just says game over and everyone comes back to life for the next round.
So they're drawing a contrast with real life, where actions have real permanent consequences.
Exactly. And they're suggesting that maybe this is having an effect on how young people see violence in the real world.
Yeah, it's a complex issue, of course.
Absolutely.
But it's a thought-provoking point about how virtual experiences could be influencing our perception of reality.
Yeah. But even though Red State raises this concern about the influence of violent video games, it's super important to emphasize what both our sources say about the Metcalf family's response to all of this.
Absolutely. Both sources are clear that the Metcalf family is not trying to frame this tragedy around race or politics,
Red State even mentions a prayer vigil for Austin that was held at the family's church.
showing that the community is really focused on supporting the family and remembering Austin.
Yeah, wanting to come together and heal rather than being divided. It's really powerful.
Yeah, it is.
And there are reports that school officials will be looking into how Karmelo Anthony was able to get a knife into the track meet.
Yeah, how could that happen? It's a serious question, especially when it comes to the safety of everyone at school events.
Absolutely. And on the legal side of things, Red State points out that in Texas, if Karmelo Anthony is convicted of first-degree murder, he could be facing life in prison.
Wow.
It's a stark reminder of the very serious consequences that come with these kinds of violent acts.
For sure.
So, just to be super clear, throughout this deep dive, we've tried really hard to stick to the information from these two news sources. We haven't added any of our own opinions or interpretations, especially on any politically charged stuff.
Right.
We've just focused on what happened, the reactions, and the discussions as they were reported.
I think it's interesting how even when they're covering the same tragic event, different news sources emphasize different things,
Right.
They include different details, and they end up framing the story in ways that reflect their own focus and what their audiences care about.
Definitely.
It just goes to show that it's important to look at things from different angles, to read more than one source when you're trying to understand something complicated.
Absolutely. It's just devastating, the loss of this young man, Austin Metcalf. By all accounts, he was a bright, promising kid.
He was.
And it's hard to believe that it happened over what seems like such a small disagreement.
It's just heartbreaking.
It makes you think about the impact this will have on his family, especially his twin brother, and the whole community.
It's a tragedy that will affect so many people for years to come. And I think this event also forces us to think about something bigger, you know.
What do you mean?
Well, it reminds us how fragile life is and how even small conflicts can have huge consequences. And it makes us ask some tough questions. Like, in a world where things can escalate so quickly, what are the things that lead to these tragedies? And how can we as communities deal with this kind of loss? How can we heal?
Those are big, important questions, and I don't think there are easy answers, but it's something we all need to think about.
Definitely.
This deep dive, going through the details of this awful event, was really meant to help us understand what happened based on the information we have. And we want to end by acknowledging how serious and sad this situation is. Our hearts go out to the Metcalf family and everyone who's been affected by this tragedy. Our goal is to try and make sense of things, to learn from what happened, and to do it with respect for everyone involved.
Well said. It's a story that will stay with us for a long time.
It will.
Deep dive in the building. UK, what really good? Let's dive in. Get triggered. Netflix, you son of an itch. In your show Adolescence, you pulled a race switch. The real killer teen is black, you made him white. This ish just ain't right.
We're diving deep into the heart of what we believe. Conservative values in our souls, they're interweaved. With courage and with honor, we'll hold our ground. For freedom, for tradition in this land we found.
We cherish our Constitution, the words that set us free, the right to bear arms, to speak and to agree. We honor our forefathers who fought with steadfast might for the dream of a nation shining bright in the night. In every town